DaVinci Resolve is great. The Fusion page is great. The Fusion page can also sometimes be a little scary. So in this video, I just want to show off something cool in the Fusion page, a nice little rig. And as we put this together, we're going to cover some like Fusion fundamentals while still showing off some stuff that some of it is relatively new, but we're also just going to show off some like techniques and features that like maybe some people miss if they're self-taught in Fusion like I was. But this is what we're going to be making. Just kind of like a little basic title here. There's no animation here, but what I want to show off is over here in the inspector where we have one button with 3 different presets that changes the color on all 3 of these elements in scene. And like a lot of things in Fusion, there are plenty of different ways I could have done this. This way uses no expressions and sort of leaves us with this node tree that maybe for some beginners can seem like a little complicated, but I think as we walk through, you'll see what every specific node does. And I like this as a basic effect for teaching some cool basic-ish stuff in Fusion. So let's try to recreate this fun little rig from this scratch. Super useful for this kind of thing if you want multiple different presets for whatever you build. I'm gonna head back to the edit page real quick and just drag a fresh Fusion composition onto my scene so we're not like butting around those different nodes. But the first thing we're going to do is just build kind of a single version of this effect, right? So we have that background shape, we have sort of like an accent bar, and then our text. So I'm gonna click this button to create a background node. Let's go ahead and make this something, I don't know, like this like little blue here. I can press 2 to pull this up in my viewer, or 1 if I had both these viewers up here. I could close one or the other, but I just want 1 for now. And we have this blue background, and I'm going to click this rectangle button, and if that node is selected, it will automatically apply that as a mask. You can see this background node has one blue little triangle input, and that is the mask input. So this rectangle, if I preview that by itself, it gives us this black and white image because this is a rectangle mask. If I had made something like this text here and I preview that, you see this checkerboard pattern, which tells you when something is transparent, so that if you were to merge this over a background, you would see the background instead of this transparent checkerboard pattern. But when we preview this rectangle, it's a black and white image, which tells us that if we apply this as mask data to anything else, like this background, if I pull up both of my viewers here, I'll preview my mask on viewer 1, and this background on viewer 2, you'll see what's happening. The white areas of this mask shape are where it will sort of like cut that image to. But of course, it's not straight black and white, because if you pull up something like this soft edge, you see we start to introduce those shades of gray where this mask then becomes soft. This is the kind of thing that this blue mask input is looking for, but we are not limited to just using these mask nodes. We'll show that off a little bit later. I will pull down this soft edge, and I'm going to pull up this corner radius, and boom, we've got that little background shape. I'm going to reorganize a little bit here and kind of do the same thing again. I'm going to click a background node. Maybe I'll make this something like yellow. Why not? Let's click on a new rectangle, pull that width down, and if I pull that corner radius up, it will just round those edges. If I preview that by itself, we got this yellow bar. And then if I were to do something like create a new background node, by the way, I have been clicking these buttons to add those nodes, but what I just did is press Shift Space, which pulls up this like search bar to search through all the tools you could add. So you can type in something quick like background like I did here, and that adds a new one in here. If I pull down the alpha, then that will just stay transparent, which is something I like to do. I start a lot of my compositions just with this transparent background node, sort of just to give me like a canvas to like add stuff on. Because if I then take the output of this first background node we created, connect that to the background of this new one, and preview that, we see we have that first shape. And on this yellow line, if I do the same output to output, it creates a new merge and merges those together. One small thing this does give us is on both of these merges now, we have this blend slider, which by default is just sort of like a transparency slider, but it can also just be a quick like on and off toggle, whether or not you want these. We might circle back to this, probably not, but I'm gonna do something tangential. But for this, we could real quick change this yellow line again, slide it over, and hey, we have that basic little shape. And for text, we're actually going to use a pretty new tool, this multi-text node. So on this first text layer, if I type in something like main title. Yay. And preview that. That seems fine. I will pull up my paragraph controls, left justify that, slide it over somewhere. I'm going to click a add text point layout button to add a second one and just type in like subtitle. It's a subtitle on my paragraph layout. I will also make that left justified. And then if we hop over to layout, I just need to make sure these are kind of synced in the same spot, but this will be easier to do once we, connect that back up. So let's do the same thing. I'm going to connect this up, but not before I do one thing. You'll notice for each of these separate text controls, they have individual color controls. And we could, do some things like add some crazy expressions with colors. Are even a little crazier because these actually live over on this shading tab, and we have individual color bars for these RG and B values. So if I wanted these two text layers to stay the same shape and then have a single control for that color, that could be a little hard to rig up. But if I just create a new background node, you'll see by default, it created a merge node to sort of bring those together. But if I get rid of that merge node, I can use that multi-text, take the output of that into that same mask input we were looking at earlier. So even though this isn't a mask image, it still is maintaining that what we call an alpha layer data. So it knows what is solid, it knows what is transparent, and it can serve as that mask input on this new background, which again, by default, this was black, but now we can make this red. And now we have this one color control for both of these text layers. Now, both of those text layers are living in one multi-text tool, but even if we did a standard text plus and did something like this, merge those together, wow, this looks great. The same principle still works. These are now merged together, and I could just take the output of that entire thing we've sort of comped together, put that into the mask input of this background, and now have a single color control for that. But I want to just use this multi-text tool, so I will do that, get rid of these, and at that point, we can connect the output of that background back to this merge train we're building here. And wow, we have kind of that title. We could then come into multi-text and reposition these however we want. Make this extra bold, slide it over here, make this other one position the same way. We don't want that bold, maybe something regular, and a good bit smaller. Wow, we have a title. I don't want to say it's a good looking title, but we have something here, right? Now, real quick, I want to demonstrate a bad way to do something. Say we wanted those 3 different variations, right? We've built a little node tree. We could copy that entire node tree and just paste it 2 more times, right? Wow, and then we could even go in here and change some of these colors on these other options to something that I'm sure will look very gross. Yep, and we could even do that one more time. Why am I making all my text red? Text purple something, red line, and green background for our third option. Wow, so hey, we have 3 different options here, and you know what we could do? We could even use one of these nifty new switch tools and start to connect those up. You need to come over to this config option, bump this number of inputs up to 3, and if we just connected all 3 of those options to that switch, we could just preview that single switch and have those buttons, okay, kind of like what we had earlier, right? Is this what we're going to do? No, because this is still not very flexible at all. Because let's see if I preview this first option here. If I come into any of these other text options and then change it, oh, my text isn't showing up. But if I were to come back to this switch, go back to that second input now, oh, we see that that text has been modified because now we have 3 complete different versions of these text nodes. Same with this extra line. If I wanted to like extend this out or something, that would only exist on this one sort of middle copy that we have here. What I want to do is kind of maintain a rig for swapping out colors while keeping the same root shapes driving the things that are going through that color change the same. And of course, there are 12 different ways to do everything in the Fusion page. We're going to use a way that I think makes sense for me, and hopefully will keep teaching us some fun Fusion things. So we are going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and delete just these other masks and text layers and these other merge shapes. I'm going to keep the ugly colors we have already made because I'm going to give us a bit of space to work here. I will just name this null background for the first one we created. And if we look at just this background shape, I'm going to grab the other background nodes we used in those other copies, and I'm going to take the one output of this rectangle mask, which is already connected to this first background node here, but I'm also going to connect it to these two other nodes here. This is a foundational thing to understand about working with nodes. Lots of nodes have different inputs, and only one thing can be plugged into those inputs. But when nodes have this just gray square output, you can take the output of that nodes to as many other places as you want. So now these are connected, and I have this first option, second option, and third option. But now if I go in and change this rectangle at all and hop between those, that change is reflected because it is one mask driving all these slightly different colored shapes. But now I need a way to switch between them. You could, rig up multiple different merges and maybe toss an expression or a custom control or any other thing on like these blend options, or even use switch as a modifier, which is something we're not going to show off on this video. But what we could do also instead was pull in that, hey, wait, do I still have that one switch over here? I do. I'm going to pull this one switch over now and connect that first shape to the switch, second shape to the switch, third shape to the switch, and the output of that to that one merge. So now we have that switch, and we can swap between these colors. At this point, I am going to go back to that config and rename these different options we've got to just preset 1, preset 2, preset 3. And then back on controls, we can hop between those. So I'm going to do the first step of that for this other line we rigged up as well. I did spend a little bit more time for that demo, choosing colors I thought worked well together. I want to call out, I used this Coolers website to generate those. You can generate lots of different color swatches or palettes. I used those, but now I've done this for this other line as well. But here's the other sort of Fusion principle we're going to touch on: instanced nodes. I already have this one switch living over here for changing this very background layer, but I know that when I want this to change, I also want the color selected for these other options to change. Again, I could copy and paste this and like right click, do some Fusion expression stuff. But if I know I want this to perform the exact same function just using different inputs, we have another option: instance nodes. For this, I'm going to copy this switch and Control-Shift-V to paste an instance node that has instance in the name, and it is synced via this little green line. And then now if I connect these three options in the same order, just making sure they're 1, 2, 3, connect that to the merge now. If I preview that merge and go back to this first switch, or either switch, they are now linked. Now when I click this button to change any of them, it is controlling both of those switch nodes, even though they have completely separate sets of masked background nodes into them. We are changing both of them, so now one control gets us all those together. And of course, we can do the same thing with our text. So one text driving the mask on all of these three different background nodes. Copy that switch, instance paste that. So connect them back up, making sure they are in the same order. Connect it back to that final merge. We have that merge, and on any of those switch nodes, we can just click through and change the color on all three of those assets with a single click. No beefy expressions or modifiers, and here we are maintaining full flexibility. If I were to change anything in that text, that would be preserved. If I were to change this mask over here, and then swap back between these colors, all of these options are preserved. Any animation you add would be preserved. And if we just like shift these over, we do have our little node tree, which has some stuff going on. You know, we have lots of like branching different patterns. We have this like weird green instance line floating in there, but hopefully walking through that process wasn't too scary. We knew what we were doing every step of the way. And that gets us to this final endpoint, which, you know, this option does look very gross, but if I go back to my nice pretty option, you can toggle through different presets. If you wanted to make a basic lower third pop-up, you could even add animation after the fact to just like scale the entire thing down. Again, working with nodes, after the fact, you can scale the entire thing down, put it down into the corner, and, you know, no corner here, corner here, not corner, keyframe. But hey, have that animation with any color. You can swap those. Again, you probably won't swap this like while it was playing, but just to show you, this is just more power of nodes, that we are keeping things flexible by using one set of objects to mask all these different colored background shapes and one single transform node. You wouldn't want this animation to happen on this background shape and then have the exact same animation on the rectangle and the exact same animation on the text. Add one animation node after the fact to just keep it all together. And then even if you end up with a slightly complicated node tree, hopefully it's something you can go through node by node and see how things are being put together. Text, colored, background, accent, text, animation. Most of the time, these kind of videos don't do great because, again, it is just talking more about how Fusion works than creating something that is especially flashy. But I really like these videos as just like Fusion learning resources, covering a few different must-know tools when it comes to basic masking, and then some fun other things like the switch node or instanced nodes. It's always a good time. I use a similar rig to this for the light mode, dark mode switch in my recent pack of sort of like YouTube subscribe pop-up buttons. Which are for sale now. The info on those will be in the description. But framing this as this like different like preset option, I thought was cool. Hopefully you do too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.